Hello, and welcome to another edition of Storytelling on Orchard Street in the podcast studios of P&T Knitwear Bookstore on 180 Orchard Street, hence the name. With me, I have my favorite person here at P&T Knitwear. I only know your first name, Felicia.
Hi, it's so nice to be here with you, Pete.
I'm so glad this happened. I was hoping I could get to do this at some point. My guest canceled, so I decided to be my own guest. And I'm doing a episode that'll be all music related, all about musicians or music. And but I wanted you to come in here because I was hoping that you can talk about the bookstore and how this all happened in the podcast studio and how's it going and all that. And then if you want, you could talk about something that's relevant in your life, nothing to do with the bookstore.
Yeah.
Maybe just pull that a little closer. Yeah.
Great.
That's good. And your last name, did you say it? I didn't hear
Yeah,
it.
my name is Felicia Reich. I am the podcast studio associate at P&T Knitwear Podcast Studio inside P&T Knitwear.
And a very friendly and supportive person. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
you
Pete.
very much.
We love having you here.
Thanks.
It's an absolute pleasure to be able to host you in this space.
Yeah.
Something we love to do here is host community members.
Right.
You've contributed so much with your participation in readings and things like that. We're also an event space, as you know. We'll host readings, we'll host author talks and conversations, Q&As, book signings as well. Sometimes we'll host things like fundraisers and things like that.
Right. It's a great space. It's a really beautifully done space. So I go to a lot of readings, and a lot of them are in bars, and sometimes you get stuck in the back or whatever. And not that that's bad, but it's nice to come to the readings here because there's no distractions. There's no, I like to have a beer here and there, but, that's not stepping over what's going on. I mean, sometimes, like, one of the readings I go to can be, like, kind of noisy and, hard for the poets to get their message out. But here it's so intimate, and there is a cafe also. So if you come to a reading or an event, you can have a latte or some kind of iced tea or something.
Our coffee is some of the best that I've ever had, and that is like an unbiased opinion.
And the teas are good too. There's always a good tea.
We house make our own chai, our own London fogs, our own mochas.
The last time I was
really
here, I'm forgetting her name.
Amina?
No.
She's the manager. Shayna?
Shayna. I thought I was going to say something like Shoshana. Shayna. I would have been close. She was making something that I do at home. She had fresh ginger, and she was going to make a ginger extract tea.
Yeah.
And she was doing all these spices with it, and oh man, I wish I was there when it was finished.
Seriously, like the level of care that all of our baristas put into all of their drinks, and like especially like to our regulars and things like that, knowing what they like, what their body needs at that time, like you can definitely feel it. Like I can tell when somebody makes a chai, like who infused their love into it. Like everyone leaves like their own thumbprint on it. It's great.
Tell the listeners the background, because it's very interesting for this store. And how that name came about.
P&T Knitwear is not a very intuitive name for a bookstore.
Yep. Which makes it interesting.
Yeah, I like to make the little joke, like no knitwear, no clothes, just books.
Right. Maybe you should sell books that are knitted.
Yep, or like book covers.
Knitted covers. You should sell knitted covers for books.
Yep, have knitting clubs here, all of that stuff.
That'd be great, yeah.
Our owner, his name is Mr. Bradley Tusk. That's where the tea comes from. If you'll follow along in the story, his grandfather came over after World War II as a refugee from the Holocaust with his good friend, last name Pudlow. They started a clothing store. This area, Orchard Street in particular.
Of course, that was a big thing here.
Yeah, the garment district.
Yeah, really.
We've had people in here who knew the place when it was a knitwear store.
Right, that's cool.
It's very special.
Are they still from the neighborhood, or they were like coming back or something?
I think they're still in the neighborhood, which is like,
cool.
We're happy to have them. Yeah, because that's,
Do
I
they
mean,
come
what
often?
you're doing.
I would
No, it's happened.
They would be great for the show.
I know, right?
Because the show's storytelling on Orchard Street. I've had quite a few poets, but I also have had other types of guests. So I didn't want to call it, even though I'm kind of promoting my poetry, and I also am promoting the poetry of people I meet along the way, which is a lot of fun. But I didn't want it just poetry. I wanted to have options of other types of ways of telling stories.
Yeah, like even
So
like
they
what we're
would be
doing
able to
now.
tell incredible stories. If they could tell stories about this neighborhood and what it was like, and
We have some really incredible people who come through these doors.
I bet it's a great location for that, you know.
We had a gentleman who he used to have his photo taken by a photographer named Clayton Patterson, like a legend in the
Right,
neighborhood.
okay.
And our podcast studio manager, his name is Serge. You
Right.
know him very well,
Yeah.
of course. He's born and raised in the Lower East Side, so
Right,
he used to
yeah.
have his photo taken by
Yeah.
Clayton Patterson.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot of rich history that comes
He
through
showed
these
me
doors.
a picture of his mother in a book.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's super cool stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the story of P&T Knitwear. And then Bradley Tusk has been a lifelong lover of literature. He has invested in some really cool stuff like Lime Scooters a while ago, Tend, the dentist brand. Yeah, so to like add this as a passion project has been very exciting for him and very exciting for all of us here to create it with him. It's very much like a co-creative process, yeah.
Cool. So, by the way, we're not that far away from a legendary restaurant, New York City restaurant, Cat's Deli.
Of course, of course.
I forget, it was like the 1890s, right? Can you pass my book? I have an idea.
Yeah.
This is becoming one of my favorite episodes because I like to improvise. You know, usually, you know, plan the show out. I get feedback from the guests. Sometimes I know them already, I've heard them, and I write notes and questions and a bio and all that for them.
Yeah, and this is organic. It's like whatever.
Yeah,
pops
it's kind
into
of
your
fun.
mind.
Yeah. But, so we're talking about this neighborhood. I'm going to read something from the book because I'll explain it to you. I don't think I've read it yet here, so I try not to repeat because I've only been on the air for 15 episodes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I don't want to repeat things. So one thing they did wrong with this book, I found it pretty fast. One thing they did wrong with this book is there's no table of contents. So if you want to, like, I don't remember where they all are. I'm looking for something I can't, you know, it takes longer to find it. So in the 90s, so I was a drummer for 40 years, and I was in different phases of the music business, but in the 90s I got a job with Lifebeat, the music industry fights AIDS. And the 90s, of course, the AIDS epidemic was pretty much at peak. You know, a lot of people had died up to that point, and when I started, they still hadn't really gotten the drugs down pat. It was better, but it wasn't quite there yet. So there was a lot of mostly men, honestly, and mostly gay men, or certainly a lot of minorities in the places that I would go. I would bring musicians to go perform for people in the hospitals and long care facilities.
Amazing.
Honestly, one of the greatest experiences I could say I've had in my life. When I interviewed for the job, I interviewed in an office, and then she said, "Why don't you come to one of the shows?" So it was at Terrence Cardinal Cook, all the way up in the Upper East Side, and there were 200 beds, you know. And I have to tell you, I knew that conceptually there's something I really wanted to do, but I didn't know if I'd actually, like, I knew the part of getting the musicians to go would. Well, actually, I wondered what that would be like, because people were still very leery of AIDS. Like, still, we didn't understand it, right? So it might be I thought, well, it might be hard to get people to go. They'd be afraid to go, you know. And then I was wondering if I could do it. And I went to a performance. The performances would be like in a family room, or, you know, a shared room. And they weren't usually that big, bigger than this, but not usually large rooms. So it was very intimate for the guests and the performers. And to me, it was the essence of what music should be. because music really, even though MTV doesn't matter, but it's a frame of reference, music wasn't about like that, MTV or, how much money you make. And really, in this essence, it's part of the community and part of healing and part of entertaining and part of being a human being, right?
Yeah.
So the business side of it kind of can detract from it. But in this case, I think the performers got as much out or more out of it than the people who were coming. So the first time I went, it was really intimidating because these people were really sick. A lot of them had lesions, or really, really thin, or were hooked up to machines, and it was hard to see the first time I went, And the woman that was interviewing me said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I guess I hesitated a little bit because I was in a state, from seeing that, I knew I wanted to do it, but I was like, this is really intense, Anyway, so I clarified that to her, and I said, I really want to do this. I just, it was a lot to see.
It's hard to see someone in that condition.
Right, and most people didn't see people like that unless they had a loved one in that position, right?
And that's what I'm thinking too, with this effort that you've made, these people probably had not been in the vicinity of other humans in an intimate way,
right.
So to be in such a small space.
And we would bring bags of candy and invite the people there to the show and give them candy. That was a big draw. so that's why all this is coming back to me. It's really linked into this neighborhood because I would buy the candy right over here, economy candy.
Yep.
I would buy 4, 5, 6 shopping bags of candy to hand out. So, but what made me think of this topic was a few blocks this way on Rivington Street, there was a Rivington House, and that was the newest facility. It was built just for that purpose. Everything else was in hospitals, and they were going to have 200 beds and state of the art care, And they had on the roof, well, not outside on the roof, but that floor of the roof, they had a huge room, and I was able to get equipment donated, so we could have a little, more to the shows. And the other places were just a piano you would hope would be in tune, But in this case, we could it was easier to put a bigger show on, So I went there every week for years.
Wow.
It's not there anymore. The city didn't renew the lease because they wanted to sell it to a developer, which is really horrible to hear. But I used to go every week, and for some reason there was one, they didn't call them patients, one resident, because they had a room, and they were called residents. They didn't call them patients anyway.
Yeah, like hospice care.
Yeah, except not everybody was that. There was different levels of conditions. There were people that at that point. Usually, if somebody got really ill, they would go to a hospital. Then from there, And if they got that sick, maybe they would go to a hospice. But it was all levels of. Some people looked like they were okay, to some degree, but not okay to be on the streets, But this one resident, I could picture him still. I don't know. He was a really colorful character, and I liked talking to him. He had a daughter, and he had pictures of her on the wall, and he had, he used to like to draw. Anyway, this is for him. It's called Rivington House on Rivington Street. With his gloved hand, he smacked the plate-sized button, and the front door of the residence automatically opened. And he wheeled himself out the door, down the ramp, up the block to the park. It's not central, but it had trees and benches, and sometimes pretty girls flitting by. It took him back when he was young and had game. Now he was stuck in a chair, watching life on the east side leave him behind. He didn't recognize anyone anymore, and he missed the old days. Hanging out on the street corner, drinking a Colt 45 and bragging with the crew. They are long gone, and Jimmy's Corner Bodega was now a fancy boutique. He quickly gulped down his Pastello, afraid some well-meaning hipster would toss coins in his grind. He didn't take handouts, at least not that way. And yet he lived on the government's dime, but not by choice. He made the best of it, living with AIDS in a long-term care facility. Despite the hanging beads, the colored lights and photos of his angel plastered on his wall. It was just a hospital room when you get down to it. Been 8 years, and he can't even remember how it came down to this, or he was really good at forgetting. He opened his sketchbook and drew gods and heroes in a place much better than this. Time was suspended as images filled the clouds and the pencil moved across the page. The minutes of the day chipped away. It was time to go back and wait in his room for the squeaky wheels of the cart to come down his hall and be served a plate of humility pills and a cup of juice to wash it down.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me more about you personally, not just the store. I was interested. We don't always get to talk in depth because usually I'm concerned about all this and you got stuff to do.
I mean, like,
what made you come to work at a bookstore? Do you write?
yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that I've ever identified as in life has been a writer.
Okay.
And like hearing you talk about, mortality pretty much. Like, I mean, I think about that all the time.
That's a common theme in my writing. And I'm 65, so I'm a little closer to it. So I've got, the more older you get, the more you feel how strong that feels.
I had an experience, so I'm only 25.
Right.
At this point, I was 24. I am from Florida, and there's a really big water park.
Where in Florida did you grow up?
I'm from South Florida in the
Okay.
suburbs of Fort Lauderdale. It's about 45 minutes north of Miami, and there's it's a huge water park that it's in the suburbs.
Right.
It's like a really big operation. And there used to be this ride I loved that was like a massive funnel, and you're in a 4 or 6 top tube, and you go around and around. Like
That sounds like
Liverpool.
fun. I love water parks.
It was my favorite ride, and I went I guess last year when I was 24 or whatever it was, and I was so afraid of it. And I'm not the kind of person I love roller coasters, I love thrills, and it just like dawned on me like I'm putting myself in danger.
Right.
And when I was young, like I did not know danger.
Right.
And so it's just so crazy to be, like putting my life on the line for fun.
Right.
And I'm the kind of person who does that.
Uh-huh. Like what other things have you done?
I
Skydiving?
haven't done that, and I really want to do that with my mom.
Maybe move that just a little closer to the mic. I'm getting worried that it's
Yeah.
perfect.
This is good to know,
Yeah, that's
too.
good. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
I want to hear everything.
Yeah. No, it definitely sounds better. Another identity is whitewater rafting. The rivers have always been really important to me. I used to travel with my family a lot, and we used to go whitewater rafting. My parents
I have a poem in the book about some of that. I don't know if you know. Sorry.
I love some like rivers are
Yeah,
very important
right.
to me. Growing up around the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just have a particular affinity for them. So I worked as a guide one summer, and I just want to keep learning and growing. And
Do you miss that part of being here?
100%.
Yeah. Because there are beaches, but you kind of have to take a go at it. It's not that quick from here.
I've been getting homesick lately because like there's like big beach festivals,
Right.
especially like around the summertime, and I'm just like, just to listen to a band sitting on the beach.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Nothing
And maybe
like
having, frozen drink.
Yeah, something
cocktail.
like that. Yeah.
I like to, a couple years in a row, I went by myself. I'm married and have a son, but it didn't work out for all of us to go for reasons I can't get into. But I went to Montauk, and I would go in September. So it's after where it's really crowded, and it's still warm enough. And the rooms are almost half price, and the beach is not crowded. It's really cool. And, I'll show you pictures after we're off the air. But there was one night I was sitting in town having dinner, and the sky was, like, incredible. It was just like a animated show. It
The
was
sky?
I finished dinner, and so I had to go to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Montauk is the end of the island, and you can, like, almost throw a rock to the water from all sides. Like it's like...
So narrow.
Yeah, so narrow. So I went to the beach, and I'd never seen anything like it. It was the sky. It was like a light show, or like I said, animation. Because from the town, it was interesting. When I got there, it got really dark and layers of orange, and it got darker and darker and darker. I took a whole series of shots, and it's just incredible.
Do you have a nice camera?
No, it was for my phone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have like so many sunset photos on my
Yeah,
phone.
and sunsets too. I got some really good, and sunrises, because I get up early, you know.
Some of my favorite memories like are sleeping on the beach with my
Oh,
friends.
sleep on the beach is
Yeah,
the
because
best.
I'm from the East Coast, so
Right.
you have to wake up with the sun in order to see the sunrise.
Right.
Ugh, you bring blankets. It's great.
It's the best.
Yeah.
And what I love about the beach, and so when I would go out there, I was like a block or two away from the beach. So you don't feel the pressure of having to sit there for 5 hours, but you can go whenever you want.
Yeah.
So I like to get up early and go for a walk with the sunset, you know, and maybe go for a walk, you know, start my day, get some exercise, and then go back and maybe eat breakfast, do some things, then go for a swim, and maybe go have lunch and do something else, and go back and have a swim, have dinner, and then see the sunset. Yeah. This is perfect.
It's the whole day.
I could live like that. Yeah.
Definitely. There's this website called Workaway, and you exchange like labor for food and board. And sometimes it's pretty involved. You're like building a barn or something like that. Sometimes it's just like, oh, like, you know, tidy around the house, tend to the garden.
Right.
And it's really just people who want company. And there's this one guy who has a house on Montauk, and he has a ton of surfboards, and he's right on the ocean. I've been dreaming about staying with him.
You got to do it.
I really
So
have
you can-
to.
Yeah.
With the
It's
season
not that hard to
coming
get
up.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But do I
do
love-
before the super busy season. you
True.
know, Yeah.
Yeah. So around
Where it's starting to get warm enough, and you know.
probably soon, like in a couple of months.
But if you're surfing, the water doesn't have to be.
I got a suit. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. For surfing purposes, it doesn't matter, right? So.
No, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, and like people are still surfing. It's February. I mean, it just snowed a second ago. I don't know if you saw
Surfers
that.
amaze me. Like when you see those replays of like surfs where the water it must be over 100 feet high.
Like big wave surfing.
Yeah, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think they do it. I saw one recently. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how you do a regular surfing. You know, I was never that athletic.
I
I don't have great balance. So.
I don't surf yet because I don't stand.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
learning to paddle and things like that. But anyway, I was whitewater rafting on like huge water, and it's like literally called big water. It was a class 4 at least rapid. This is in West Virginia on the Gauley River. There's a festival every year called Gauley Fest. So it's a bunch of
I like the
river
name of that.
rats.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get together and goof around. And this is like a serious river. Like to scale, like it goes like 1 to 5
Right.
class. And I was facing this wave. It's called Hawaii 5-0.
Get
And
outta here,
I
really?
just saw it in front of me and go, oh, that's big water. It dawned on me. I was like, yeah, that's why it's called big water. I was
Right.
just like a sheet of water in
Right.
front of me.
And that's why it's Hawaii 5-0. It's from the surfing term. Wow.
But it's
I don't know
nothing
why I didn't make that
compared to
connection.
like
Did
the
you ever see
waves
that?
that
You probably didn't see the original TV show, did you?
I did. And
Did you?
then I've seen a little bit of the new one. And then that actor, I don't remember his name, one of them, he's in this new show I love.
Huh.
It's called New Amsterdam, and it's all about...
Oh, I was interested. I was wondering if that was any good. I saw that.
It's
Is it?
amazing.
So Hawaii 5-0, I have to say this because my mind goes crazy with when I'm talking to you. This is fun.
Yeah,
I
you're
get
like
ideas.
us
Well,
in
there's
Surge.
something I want to look for, but Hawaii 5-0 is so that's a like kind of TV show I grew up with. I'm going to watch that. The original is the one in the '60s. And there was also Mission Impossible. It was a TV show before the movie also,
wow, I didn't know
right?
that, yeah.
Oh, it was a great TV show. It was so clever and it was so ahead of its time and it was so detailed, you know, more than, because again, we're talking about the 60s. But what I wanted to say was the bass player on both of those and a ton of other scores and about 10,000 hits from the 60s is Carol Kay. So she even did some Motown and she
Are we talking about Carole King right now?
no, Carol Kay. Yeah, she's pretty much like one of the early women musicians that made it to that kind of level. You know, I mean, there were a lot of great women musicians throughout the time in 40s and 50s, and they do get overlooked. And I could do some research and do a show just about that. But Carol Kay, it's almost like she invented the electric bass. I mean, she made it really prominent. And she was really a good jazz guitarist. in the 50s, she did a lot of jazz guitar, mostly that. But she started doing studio work because she had a kid and it's more, regular.
Mm-hmm.
But actually in the 50s, she played guitar for, she was on Richie Valens' hit La Bamba, which you've heard, even if you didn't hear the original one.
Man.
Yeah, and God, this is taking me down a rabbit hole. I can talk for 2 hours.
Well, I'm going to stop you right now.
Yeah, I'm getting off the subject, but the music. Look into
Richie
karaoke
Valens.
and look into karaoke because she's amazing. She was a talent. She was on the greatest songs in the 60s.
I have such an obsession with the day the music died. And I've been, speaking of writing, I've been thinking about writing this for years. This was the first piece when I decided that I was going to commit to the writing life.
Wow.
I was like...
I wish you had to hear that you could read it now that it's on the subject matter.
I mean, I really imagine the life that got sucked out of that generation when their idols, people who saw them for the spirit, the creative spirits that they are.
Well, Buddy Holly, to me, it was one of the most important musicians in the 50s. I could talk just about him for hours. It's
That's where the obsession came from.
Well, Buddy Holly? Yeah, he's, to me, I feel like he's overlooked, when you talk about music history. God.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. So we were talking about rafting. I want to read this. Wasn't about rafting, but it kind of fits with the subject matter.
Awesome.
It's called Final Resting Place. White, foamy, gurgling water rapidly moving over rocks and stones. Smoothing craggy edges. Capsized body out of control, arms and legs thrashing, grasping, but there's nothing there to grab hold of. Lungs gasping for air, beams of hot, blinding sunlight, eyes burning red, winding, outraged river, snaking and weaving, a journey's end on a cold, muddy bed to a final resting place with no witness to the unfortunate bitter end. Sorry, is that too dark for you?
I got surfed once in a river, which it's when you get recycled over and over and over again and the water doesn't let you go. And I relied on my training because you ball up.
Yeah, okay.
The smaller you make yourself,
that makes sense.
You're going to rise to the top.
Cool.
And then people will play around with this. They'll get to the bottom of, they'll get under a river or a rapid, and they'll starfish, and they'll stay there longer.
Wow.
And then you can play around with it. You can stay, and you can go up and stay and go up. It just kept getting recirced. It's called being recirced or surfed. That was on the New River. So that was that same trip. That was a massive, extraordinary trip. We went camping, and I was in such good hands. My teacher's teacher was my guide on that trip. And I learned so much from watching him, from being in his boat. He was just so calm through it all.
You're a great guest.
Oh, thanks.
Considering that we didn't plan this at all. So I was originally, when I thought I was doing it by myself, and by the way, I'm very happy that this worked out, although I still want to do I was going to do a show just on all the pieces I wrote about music, but let's get a couple of them in, and you offered to read one.
Yeah, I would love to.
So I'll set it up. I forgot what it's called.
Before Her Time.
Yeah, Before Her Time.
Yeah, please.
So, you know what, let me see that for a second, because I wrote a couple. Yeah, I mean, it is. So this is about Karen Dalton. So my listeners, you should go check her music out. She was Bob Dylan's favorite folk singer. She had an unbelievable voice. I mean, there was so much emotion and feeling in her voice, kind of like Billie Holiday, but in a folk way, just drenching with emotion and heart and feeling. And her songs were great, but she just really didn't have a thing for the business part of it. But she was big in the scene in the West Village, and she knew all the folk people knew her. Yeah.
Story before we start, I used to live in San Francisco. I lived there about 6 months, and I used to spend time at this cafe in Ocean City.
Mm-hmm. I've been there, San Francisco once. I loved it.
Yeah. Anyway, I was at this cafe. This older gentleman sat down with me. He had a woman around his age companion with him. And he starts talking to me and tells me he used to be a mentor to Bob Dylan. Wow. I asked him what he means by that, what kind of mentor, and I asked him to tell me more. He said that when Bob Dylan, who by a different name, was still in, I don't remember where he's from, but University of
Minneapolis, yeah.
Yep. When he was there,
All right.
he used to hang out on this gentleman's couch. He just hosted artists, creatives, musicians.
okay.
And it was there, he hated all of his classes. It was there, he was drumming, he was playing the guitar, and he
Right.
decided to go out west
Cool.
and start his career.
Right.
So he, from his couch, launched Bob Dylan.
Wow.
I met him.
That's pretty amazing. You remember his name? Oh, okay. It's okay. So read the...
To the listeners, I
Yeah, so...
longingly shook my head no. So this is Before Her Time by Pete Solomita. What hurt you inside, my lovely songstress? Did the pain change your voice, one time angelic, to a mature, smoky longing for something more meaningful than life? You shunned the spotlight, craved by your peers, and walked away from all that. But I still can hear you, bathe in the richness of your songs, and wonder what transpired in the mind of a truly gifted artist, gone before her time.
Thank you. Maybe think about it. Maybe you can come back for part 2, and you could read something from you.
Yeah,
So I'm looking for a piece here.
next
Here
time.
it is. So this one is about the griot tradition in Mali. I've always been a big fan in exploring the music in Africa. Matter of fact, I mean, I was a drummer, so that's just natural. And all the music that I love has roots in Africa. And we could do a whole podcast about that. I did a lecture when I was in college about it. So, and real quick, if you think about it, like different parts of Africa, obviously, was part of the slave trade, different countries. And the slaves went to different places throughout the world. So they came, some of the, obviously here in the United States, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Brazil, even Peru, Jamaica. And in all of those locations, including this country, their music, it was hard for them to keep their traditions totally. Sometimes they were forced to bring on the traditions of where they were. But over time, their music evolved, and it got influenced by their new home and the new place. Not much of a home, but where they were living. And so you got jazz in this country, and you got reggae in Jamaica, and you've got samba in Brazil, and you've got Cuban music. You got mambos and descargas, and so. And then when airplane travel became easier, then all that was happening went back to Africa. Records, right, and more people traveling more. So the music spread back to Africa that African people influenced originally, and then they took it and put it back into their music. It's really unbelievable. You could look at this, and anyway, so I've always had an affinity for that, because all the music that I love from this country really for the most part, has its roots in Africa. So I went to Africa and listened to, not physically, listened to where it came from. And each country in Africa, obviously, for the most part, the music's quite different. Recently, I don't know, it's the last 8 years, 6 years, whatever, I've been delving into music from Mali. And there's so much amazing music there.
I'm so happy you mentioned Mali. That is like my #1 place that I want to visit.
Yeah, I think now's not a good time from what I read once for reasons. So you got to definitely seek that out, because I would love to go to Ethiopia, and we could talk about that too, because Mali and Ethiopia I think I got into later than some like Nigeria and Senegal and South Africa, and some of the reason is because some of those performers from there were coming to this country. They kind of got some notice in this country when I was really getting into music, 70s and 80s. And I saw a lot of great African bands,
I'm sure you have
the
such
years.
great recommendations.
Yeah, So anyway, this is about the griot, and I'm going to play a piece. Sorry, I got to cue it up. I mean, it's queued up. I got to get my phone to go back on. It's from Tumani Diabate and Siddiqui Diabate, and it's father and son. And they're from a long line of griots. It's a kora. That's the instrument. Yeah, string instrument. Griot, sing your song, steeped in deep tradition, passed from generation to generation of poetic musicians. Wipe your brows, seated like royalty, strum your kora, a stringed fugue that calls out to ancestral spirit, those that came before. Mother Earth, rich roots and soil, crops planted, a baby is born, an elder laid to rest, a village rejoices, the new bond of love, and life is carried on. I'm on the outside, but I'm looking in with respect, Molly. Drum beats, desert songs, uplifting melodies, funky rhythms steeped in the blues. I'm hooked, Molly. From the very first note, I am hooked.
I love the repetition of the word hooked because I'm just imagining like the finger that it takes to strum the instrument.
Oh, it's such a great instrument. It's such a beautiful instrument. And here, the two of the father and son doing it together, it's just great. You know?
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me.
This show's going really fast. Do I have? Oh, I want to do this one. You don't mind, do you? I love music, obviously. You know, and I read a lot of books. I read related to music over the years. I've read a lot of books about music and musicians, and I love documentaries. Period. You know, when I don't feel like being hooked into a 2-hour plus movie and drama and whatever, or you know, serial killers. I like to watch music documentaries and other ones too. So this one, I saw one about Bill Evans, the great jazz pianist whose records on his own are just otherworldly. He played with Miles Davis in the 50s, and he's on the Kind of Blue, which is still to this day the largest selling jazz record of all time. It's like if you don't have that in your collection, you're missing something big. And if you like jazz, you have to have that one. But Bill Evans had a young bass player, Scott LaFaro, and at the time he was considered, you know, the best, you know, one of the favorite bass players for people at the time. And Bill Evans loved him, and they, you know, made great music together. He died in a car accident, and it took, like, you know, Bill just took him a long time to get over it. Like he just, you know, he really obviously got deeply impacted, and this is about that. I can't understand death. You were just here and now you're gone. Too young to leave us with much more to say. The music stands still. I can't better play a note, not without your presence. Interplay, foundation, the roots of the chord. Allow me to explore my thing. It's so quiet now I sit in my room. I think as though I can hear a pin drop. It's just that way. We had unconditional love. Harmonics, we swung, we turned out the stars, kind of blue, special we all knew. We made people listen and take a deep look inside. Now life is not the same, nothing matters. The rhythm has stalled, plucked vibrations still resonate, echoing in the emptiness you left behind. Dissonance permeates and I can't envision a life without you. You know what I mean?
That was really profound. Wow. I mean, like the last line, it's creative, it's poetic, it's very impactful. Like to have a creative partner. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I feel that way. Serge Rodriguez, who runs the studio with me, like we met and it was kindred. Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy. I really like him.
He's incredible.
I want to have him on the show so we can talk about the Knicks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Just to like.
And also what he remembers from growing up on the Lower East Side.
He's just like a wealth of knowledge and kindness and spirit. He's an incredible person, and I'm very lucky to know him. yeah, just to have a creative partner who's not there anymore, it's like you really do lose a part of yourself
Yeah.
with that.
And music, well, and anything artistic, really, in my mind, you know, it helps to have that, you know, people are lucky with it. We went to 40 minutes already.
It's been a pleasure.
This has been a great show. I've really enjoyed this. Anything you want to wrap up with on the personal or business level?
Yeah, come and see us, 180 Orchard Street. We are open 7 days a week, 12 to 8.
Go to the website for events.
Yep, and come in, record in the podcast studio. We would love to have you. Free 90 minutes weekly, open and available to the public.
And come here and buy books.
Come buy books, yes, 100%. Do an event with us, get a cup of coffee.
Is there something that you would steer people into? I mean, I know books are a matter of taste, but is there something special that kind of sticks out in your head?
I just devoured Big Swiss, Jen Began's latest novel, Big Swiss.
Cool.
It will be developed into a TV show starring Jodie Comer. It is a sexy, horny rom-com set in the Hudson Valley.
Okay.
It's absolutely hilarious. Laugh out loud.
Is it good enough for it to be made into a movie? That's the question.
It's going to be a TV show,
TV show.
and
Okay.
it's going to blow people away.
Awesome.
You know, I unputdownable,
Right.
to use that term.
And what's your favorite section in the bookstore?
Essays. I'm an
Okay.
essayist myself.
Oh, nice.
I love personal essays.
Okay.
Off the top of my head,
Do you have a book?
I don't have a book yet.
You're gonna
I'm
work
working
on it?
on a
Cool.
book.
Okay.
Probably 2024 is when I'll have something really substantial.
I look forward to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Pete.
This has been so much fun. I hate it for it to end.
We'll do it next time.
But, you know, all good things come to an end, as they say. You've been listening to Storytelling on Orchard Street, and I've had the pleasure of a great conversation with Felicia, who works at, again, P&T Knitwear Bookstore, 180 Orchard Street. Thank you for listening to the show. Tell your friends. And this has been a fun time. Thanks, and we'll see you. Or you'll see us or hear us.
Hear you on the airwaves.